My name's Ian Davis. I'm here to talk about stuff that I've learned, and hopefully you guys can learn some other stuff. As a kind of demographic showing, how many folks here are students? Awesome. How many folks here are in the industry? Awesome. And how many folks here are neither students nor in the industry? Why are you listening to me? No, it's fantastic. I'm grateful that all of you have come out here. I'm excited to be here and talk a little bit. I've given this presentation before, and I hope I've improved it. We're talking about leveling up, what 10 years in the game industry has taught me. I used to call it who I am, what I do, how I got here, and some things that I learned along the way. Let's see. Just a little bit about who I am. Well, before I get to that, I tend to ramble on, so you guys may need to. It will behoove you at one point. I'm messing up. I'm messing up already. So I tend to ramble on. I go off on tangents, kind of like a horse gets spooked on a trail. So it may behoove you to stop me. Say, whoa. Yeah. I would say, whoa, settle down. I'll stall for a little bit. Try to move on. And you can say, hey, get back to the main point. I'll try to curry favor for you. Brush it off. Just brush it off. I'll rein everything in. And we'll saddle up this show and get this buggy on the road, right? Haha. I warned you there would be puns. It was in the description. So, this is where I started in games. Blazing fast modem speeds of 14.4K a second, and cassette tapes. Do you guys know what cassette tapes are? How many folks know what cassette tapes are? Cassette tapes were games back in the day. You plug them in and you'd watch, you wouldn't watch, you'd play your game, and it would rewind and fast forward and rewind and fast, load it all into memory. It was a terrible way to play games, but I loved it. And eventually they started sending CDs out with magazines, and those CDs would have demos on them. And the demos came, one year came with Diablo. The original Diablo. How many people have played the original Diablo? A few people. That game changed my life, literally. Like, the first opening cinematic, I was astounded. There were people, there was this crow, and there was this eyeball, and monsters, and skeletons, and it was a horrible cinematic by today's standards. But that was the moment I realized somebody had sat down, put together this cinematic, they colored it, they modeled it, they animated it all, and they got paid to do it. And I was like, whoa, I could do that. I like computers. I like doing things like that. And I'm into art. I like comics. I could do that. So fast forward several years, and this is my reminder slide because I didn't know there were notes. There's nothing to see here. Fast forward several years, I went to Columbus State Community College to get an associate's in art. And then I went to Columbus College of Art and Design. I'm a CCAD alumni. See, I graduated from CCAD. It's awesome. I love CCAD. And I had not had a job yet, so I was looking for a job, and my sister got me in contact with the art director at a company called Sensory Sweep Studios. Sensory Sweep Studios was out in Utah, and their art director was like, hey, we're hiring tech artists and animators, and we think you're really interesting. And I'm like, that sounds fantastic. When do you want me to come out there? And like, well, we're gonna have a hiring fair in a couple of weeks, and we've got to get this set up. And John, the guy on the email, was really nice, but every day I would send him an email. I was really persistent, probably kind of annoying, but I was like, hey, I'm ready whenever you are, just looking for a job. And he's like, oh yeah, we're really interested. Honestly, we're just not yet. Give me a couple days. And then a couple days later, I'd send him another email. I'd be like, so, it's been a couple days. What do you think? Oh, yeah, we're really still interested. And this went on for 3 weeks. To describe my time at the context of the time, I had a new wife. I had a new baby. We had we had like $500 in our bank account, and I had no job. And so I was like, this is getting really desperate. I need to do something to like push this conversation forward, and this seems like the best opportunity for me. So I spent $300, some of my last money, on a plane ticket, and I emailed John and I said, I'm going to be out in Utah on Thursday and Friday. Do you have time for an interview for me? And he's like, sure, we have time for an interview for you if you're going to come to us. And so they interviewed me. I met the president of the company. Super, super nice guy. Really, really wanted to be a nice guy. And they hired me. They gave me a job offer. And so that's where we came out with Alvin and the Chipmunks, the game, the movie.
Oh my God.
Here's a screenshot. It was an amazingly bad game. I think we got like a 35 on Metacritic.
But our sales were fantastic.
We had like 500,000 sales.
We actually almost broke 750,000 by the third printing. We printed 3 times.
Nice. I knew we'd sold like 500,000, which is, for a small company, 500,000 is a lot. And we were really happy about that. And we thought we were going places. And so we got another game, the movie, the game, called Tales of Despero. And it was funded. They were all funded. You can see right here down in the lower corner that Brash Entertainment, they were our producer. And Brash Entertainment was an investment company that specialized in making movie the game movies or games, something like that. And they had a lot of money invested in them, and they had really high salaries. And so when they went bankrupt because of the housing crash, they didn't have any money to pay us for our movie the game. And so at the end of Sensory Sweep, there were a couple of issues going on. Oh, I went backwards. There were a couple of things. There was some money that was not given to some employees, but some given to other employees. We had, there was a point for 3 months where they would hand us our paychecks because direct deposit wasn't working because their bank account checks were bouncing. And so they'd hand us our paychecks, and you left work immediately, and you ran to the bank, not your bank, you ran to the bank that was printed on the check, and you hoped you got there before other employees, because then you could cash your check at the expense of the people who didn't show up in time. He went to jail. I'm not bitter, I promise. Because I got 2 checks from them, like last 2 months ago. I got $210. They owe me 13,000 more. We'll get into that in a little bit. But they gave me an essential thing. They gave me a starting point. I had a game shipped. I had some demos that I had created. I had work that I had been able to put into a demo reel. And importantly, I had worked a little bit on transferring some 3ds Max assets into Maya so that we could work on them. And that all was able to translate into a job offer from Irrational Games. You might know them. They're a small company. They used to be known as 2K Boston. They did a game called System Shock 2, which is one of my all-time favorite games. If you haven't played it yet, it's on Steam. It's a fantastic game. BioShock, I heard it did well. I don't know. I helped on this thing called BioShock Infinite. I don't know very many people that played it, but and it was a really wonderful experience. I learned so much at Irrational, and there were some unfortunate parts to it. There were some fortunate parts to it, but that's the way with every job. One of the unfortunate parts is that at the end of DLC 2, they didn't need me anymore because they weren't going to be making very many games after that, as you may be aware. So I was let go, and I was able to, after that, get a job with Gearbox. They've done a couple of games. I know that Brothers in Arms is a big one. Some people like Borderlands. I worked on Borderlands, the pre-sequel, for just a tiny bit. I rigged Claptrap in that game. That was me. And that was my only contribution to that game. I came in way at the end of development for that. And then I helped on a game called Battleborn. Really, really popular game. Hundreds of thousands of, no, that's Overwatch. So, the Battleborn came out at an unfortunate time. It's a really great game, and it's free now, so, you know, go out and play it, if you want. I don't know. So, I am what they call a technical animator. I got into this by animation. Usually, technical animation and technical art get messed up. There was a division like 10 years ago. People were like, oh, a technical artist and technical animator, they're the same thing. And about 10 years ago, they started saying, no, they're actually two separate roles. And most companies didn't even know what it was, because most companies had a modeler or an animator who did all of the rigging or tech stuff. And that modeler or animator was better at tech stuff because they enjoyed it more than everybody else. The thing I learned in school was that animators don't like tech stuff for the most part. They just want to animate. They just want to tell a story and move things along. And at one point I realized that I didn't like animating as much as I liked the technical stuff. So putting the bones in and putting rigging and skinning and all that. So there's the technical animation part, and then there's the technical artist part, and that's kind of what Henry here does a little bit. The technical animators are in charge of those three things, and there's a lot of stuff under those three things. Rigging and animation scripting in-game. In-game means making sure the animations look good in-game and that it all works together in-game. And then technical artists worry about shaders and art tool scripting and optimization, which is important but boring. And these are all the things that I do. I make control rigs for animations. I make automation, so cloth and ragdoll, and there's follow-through so animators don't have to worry about it. UIs, painting skin weights, all of that stuff. You can take a picture. So I'm talking too much about myself, but mainly my job, mainly what I do is anything that helps keep the animator animating. That's what a technical animator is for. They make sure animators can come into work, sit down at their job, at their desk, and open up a rig and just start animating. They don't have to, you know, put in a control or snap this to that or anything like that. And when an animator needs something like a tool so that their arm is up here and they need the arm on the left hand instead, they build a tool. They don't want to have to say, okay, here's this key and I want to switch it over here. Now take this key and switch it over here. They have a tool that we wrote that will just pop it over. All of those things, that's my job, to help them focus on their job. They're my end consumer. I like making games so the other people can play them, but the person I'm working for are the animators. So I've learned several things over the years, and this is kind of the meat of my talk. And I've got 10 of these things, and they're not like hard and fast rules, but they're things that I kind of try to guide myself with. And one of them is that there's always somebody better than you. And this was kind of frustrating for me when I got to CCAD. I was like, I'm a pretty decent artist. I can draw. I'm not the greatest painter, but hey, I can animate. And then I got into class, and there were these guys who had been animating for like 10 years before they even got into college. And I hadn't. And they were really good. And they were just talented artists. And I got a little bit discouraged. I was frustrated because I was comparing my skill to their skill. And that was the wrong way to go about it. I shouldn't have been discouraged. I should have said, hey, what have they done that I haven't done yet? It isn't a bad thing. They're a separate person. I shouldn't be comparing myself to them. I should be comparing myself to the things that I've done before and how I'm improving. The next thing that I should have done is I should have learned from them. I should have looked at what they were doing differently than I myself and why they were better than me. And a lot of that was because they were spending a lot more time animating than I was. I was spending time playing games at home, which was, fun, but it wasn't what was necessary for me to get better. And eventually, I learned that I needed to focus on my passions and my strengths. Those animators did not like rigging. They didn't like skinning. They didn't like putting controls in. They didn't like any of the technical scripting, and all of that stuff fascinated me. So animation is, you all know animation, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, and you have to pay attention to all these little details, like, the follow-through of your cloth and hair, and, overshoot and all that squash and stretch. I didn't like any of that. I just wanted the computer to do it for me. And so I wanted to build tools so that the computer would do that for me. That was fascinating to me. And nobody else wanted to build tools. Everybody else wanted to focus on, the little bend of the finger and how it came back. And I'm like, I don't care. I just want to be able to push my finger down and have it automatically compress. And they're like, well, write a tool. And I didn't, so. The next thing I learned, and this is something I learned at Sensory Sweep, was don't work for free. There's a caveat. There's always a caveat. Internships and work study is of necessity at times something that you have to work for free. If you can find a paid internship, though, I would far prefer you do that than go out and not get a paycheck, because you get to do what you enjoy doing, and you get to put food on the table as well. It's a win-win. There's a lot of people who might say, exposure. You'll get exposure. You're going to be paid by our advertising your work. And people will say, you did great work. Exposure doesn't put, again, food on the table. I worked for Sensory Sweep for 6 months after they stopped paying a lot of employees. I was getting paychecks. Normally, I was getting 2 paychecks a month. And then they started going down to 1 paycheck a month. And eventually, they started giving no paychecks a month to me. And that was frustrating. I had 2 kids. I had stuff to pay for. So, don't work for free. And the next thing is you should be proud enough of your work. You should be willing to say, my work is good enough that it deserves to be paid for. And you need to be aware of how good your work is. So if you don't think your work is good enough to be paid for, make your work good enough to be paid for. That's an important thing, because the job contract, not a written contract, but the social contract of a job is, I'm working for you so that you can pay me money. Therefore, the work I give you is worth the money that you give me. And you need to know that work that you do is worth the money you're getting paid for. But again, especially if paychecks stop, don't work for that company. If they stop paying you, but they keep telling you to keep working, don't keep working for them. One of the things that you need to know if you're a student, you need to expect tests for employment. They are going to ask you to animate something. They're going to ask you to rig something. They're going to ask you to program something, design something. The people who are hiring should expect you to prove that you're good enough to hire. For tech animation, I do rigging, I do skinning, I do some animation and some scripting. For animation, it's usually some walk and run cycles, another action or two like smashing the boulder or punching some jerk. Design, I don't really know what designer departments look for, but usually it's design documents, maybe build a level, show them that you're able to do that stuff. Level art, environment modeling, that's all directed work. They tell you, build a crate, make it look awesome, and you build a crate, and they tell you it looks awesome. But there's also a compatibility test. So the thing we do at Gearbox, our process is lengthy, and all hiring processes are a bit lengthy. It's at least 2 to 4 weeks. We send out a skill test first of all, and the skill test is free to us because we don't have to do anything. We just tell them, hey, we send them a file and we say we expect you to do a rigging, we expect you to do a UI, and we expect you to do some automation. It doesn't matter to us what, just do those things. And when they send it back to us, we can evaluate them and say, okay, well, he didn't do good skinning, he did a great rigging, he didn't do good automation. There are some things we can teach, there are some things we can't. For example, I can teach you guys how to work in Maya. I can teach you guys how to work in Max. Not so much Motion Builder, but I can teach you scripting. I can teach you skinning principles and help you along there. I can't teach you how to get along with people. And if you come in and you're like, oh, I'm the best guy ever, and oh, geez, I haven't worked in the industry at all, but that sucks, and I can't believe you did that, we're probably not going to hire you. You need to be able to know how to get along with people. You need to be able to know how to make nice and have good work relationships, because those people are going to be your co-workers for for the foreseeable future, 2 to 5, 6 years, hopefully, not usually forever, but a long time. And you want to be able to get along with them, and you also want to make sure they can get along with you. So you need to be compatible, and at Gearbox, we do that. We sit down, we say, hey, what are some of your favorite movies? What are some of the things you do? How do you handle this situation? So you need to expect that. You need to be prepared for that. Most of all, you need to be able to prove to an employer that you have something that they want. Employers are businesses. At Gearbox, we want to make money for ourselves, and we want to entertain the world. That's our mission. We want to entertain the world while being profitable. So we need to be able to know that the people we hire have something to offer us so that we can continue to entertain the world. And then the next thing is actually a really important thing. You need to learn to recognize work situations that are not compatible with your life. Sensory Sweep at the end was not compatible with my life. I said they were paying me 1 paycheck a month. They were not helping me out as much as I wanted them to, but I kept working for them because Dave Rushton, he seemed like a really nice guy. He tried his best, he was very earnest, and he would talk to us every month, and he'd be like, oh, we're gonna get contracts, I promise you, just keep working on what you're working on. It'll help us out in the long run. We're gonna be able to do this. And he wasn't able to fulfill that promise, but more so, there were a number of people that who had left work already, who were very bitter about not being paid, and rightfully so. And those people had started getting together and started trying to figure out ways to get the money they were owed back from Dave. And I got mad at those people. I wasn't mad at Dave, because Dave was paying me. I was mad at the people who were trying to get what they were rightfully owed, because they were trying to take money away from me, which is wrong. That's a bad situation to get in. I'm gonna skip forward a couple slides. That's called Stockholm Syndrome. You don't wanna work for a company that makes you feel bad, or that puts your work, your life, into a position that is unhappy. There were many, many times in my life where I would come home from work and I wouldn't want to do anything. I would just sit and stare because life was awful at work. And that was not good. I had 2 kids at home. I had my wife. There were situations that I could have fixed, but I didn't. And so you need to be able to learn to recognize those situations, and you need to be able to be willing to walk away from them if you can't fix them. And that's the end of it. You need to be able to willing to walk away from situations that you can't fix. And if you can fix it, work hard to fix it, because there are lots of jobs out there, and there are lots of opportunities. The sensory sweeps of the world are not the only places you can work. I learned this one a couple years ago. You'll probably be ready. You'll probably be laid off at one point or another for it. The game industry is a bit brutal. They're getting better. They don't as much do the hire and fire cycle, but some companies do, because that's their business model. So be prepared for it. Try to update your reel regularly. Make sure that you're taking and make videos of it so that you can make your reel good looking. And if you can't take your work home, make sure you're working on personal projects at home. Show that you have a passion, and that the work that you do at home and the work that you do at work is of equal quality, and that you're continuing to improve. And it's rarely, if ever, personal. So this is another little anecdote. I'm trying not to digress too far. When I was at when I was at Irrational, I was a decent worker, but I wasn't the best worker. And I knew I wasn't the best worker. I was trying, but there were a lot of distractions in my life, and I felt I was doing what I needed to do. And so when they came in, my boss came and he tapped me on my shoulder one day and he said, "Hey, there's a meeting upstairs in the main conference room for you. And it was quiet, and I looked at my calendar, and there was no meeting on the calendar, and nobody else in my department was going to this meeting, so it was not the happy meeting that you want to have. And so I got up there, and there were like 7, 8 other people there, and we all sat down, and we looked at each other, and we were like, so, anybody know what this meeting's about? And a couple people said, I have a good idea what this meeting's about. And I was like, well, maybe they're starting a new project. We don't have a new project yet. Maybe we're the core team for the new project, right? And people looked at me. And the HR people came in at that point, and they said, so we have to lay you guys off. We're sorry. It is a layoff. You're not being fired. And they were specific about that because you have to be in a lot of states. And I was betrayed. I was really upset. Why did they fire me? And that was the thought that went through my mind. Why did they fire me? Why did they fire me? I don't understand. I did the work that they asked me to do. I did everything they wanted me to do. I worked really hard. Why is it me that they fired? And I was bitter about this for a long time. And this past year at GDC, I was able to talk to my old boss briefly. It was a really awkward conversation. I have regrets. But I was like, I'm sorry for not being a good enough worker. And he was like, hey, it's just business, man. And it clicked at that point. Like he had not been tormenting himself for the past 4 years about firing me. And I had been tormenting myself about being laid off. And to him, he was told by his boss, hey, you've got to let go of somebody. We have to let go of people that aren't working on our next DLC because you have to. Pick somebody out. I don't know. And on his part, he looked at me and said, well, we have somebody who's converting our entire pipeline to Maya, so we can't let her go. And we have a lead who can do everything that this guy is doing, and more. And we've got a guy who's working on database projects for all the animations that we didn't ask for because he doesn't have enough work to do. Well, that's the answer. He doesn't have enough work to do, so we need to let go of him. And it's not personal, it's just the way the cards fell. So if you get laid off, don't take it personally. Pick yourself up, move on, because they aren't going to beat themselves up over laying you off. Maybe they will for a little bit, but they have a job to do, and you have a job to do too. You have to move on. Learning is a nonstop activity. Getting back to a little bit less serious stuff. A large part of what I learned at CCAD and Columbus State is how to learn, because I got into my first job and about 80% of what I had been learning in class wasn't as directly useful as the 20% of this is how I look something up, this is how I study a rig, this is how I learn how to learn. And how to work with others, how to provide the others the things that they want so that I can be successful for them. Every job is going to have training. Every job, like I said earlier, we had an intern who we hired recently. We helped her learn Maya. We helped her learn Unreal. We helped her learn our systems, our specific systems. But we did not teach her how to get along with other people. That was something that she knew already. The other part of it is that your desired career path is not always going to follow what your employers want you to do. Right now, we are working on an unannounced game, and we've got a lot of characters that we need to get done, which means I have a lot of rigging to do. I have a lot of skinning, I have a lot of bone placement, I have a lot of controls to build. Those are the things that my employer has to have me do right now. I really, really want to do more scripting. I want to do more tool building. I don't have time for that, and my employer doesn't have time to give me that time. So I spend time on my own scripting. This weekend I've got a scripting project that I want to get finished before I come back into work on Monday. And when I get back into work, it's that scripting project is going to help me do my job. So you're going to have to continue learning outside of your job. On top of that, it's going to improve your prospects and your work capabilities. Like I said, I'm going to be able to go into work on Monday, and I'm going to be able to say, hey, I need these 4 limbs, rigged really quickly, and I've done a script. I can do that really quick. It will just improve your abilities. There's something that happened that artists talk about a lot. It's drawing. Always draw. Before I went into college, they were saying, where's your drawing pad? Where's your sketch pad? Let me look through it. And you always have a sketch pad on you. And in our drawing classes, we were told, keep your sketch pad with you and be constantly drawing. The same thing goes for every other thing. All of the artists I mentioned earlier, all of the animators that were really fantastic in my class, they had been animating for 5 to 10 years before they got into college. And they were animating constantly. I'm pretty sure that they are still animating now. So you need to understand the passions that you have, you need to keep working on them. You need to consistently and repetitively work on them so that you improve your skills, so that your capabilities are better, so that people can say, wow, your work is amazing. I want to be like you. Oh, what's that? I really messed this up. I'm just going to do this. Wow. Okay. So, it's not wrong to look for other work opportunities. A job, unless, the top one says, unless you've signed your life away, if you are on a contract and the contract specifically says you cannot look or you cannot work on other projects, it's not wrong. You should let your employer know, hey, I've been contacted by this small company. They want me to do a little bit of rigging for them. And most of the time, your employer is going to say, yeah, sure, just don't use our computers or our time. Some companies are going to say, no, no other work. You do our work and you do our work only. That's a lot of legalese to make sure that they have control over stuff, but it's not wrong to go looking for other opportunities for work. It's not wrong when a recruiter contacts you and says, hey, we've got this really awesome opportunity. Are you interested? It's not wrong to say, yes, I am interested. Well, tell me more about the opportunity. It will get you, it's hard to read there, it will keep you aware of what's expected of you in the industry in general. That's a really important thing. After Irrational, I sent all my resumes to everywhere, and I thought I was pretty great. There were some companies that were expecting a lot more of me than I realized they were expecting. And nowadays, I talk to people more. I say, hey, what are your job requirements? What kinds of things are you looking for? And I learn from that, and I try to incorporate those things in my current work. The last part of it is the most significant pay increases happen when you go to a new company. When I was at Irrational, they gave me a raise every year of, like $700 or $1,000, which is great. But when I moved down to Gearbox, they gave me a raise of $10,000. So the significant pay increases that you want or that you may want, I don't know, maybe you don't want to make lots of money, those are going to happen most often when you move to another company because the other company is trying to entice you away. The caveat to that is that when you are being paid more, you are expected to do more work, which is good. That'll help you, work more. It is a really small industry. I know people who work at a lot of major studios. I know people who work at Respawn now. I know people who work at Sucker Punch, Blizzard, obviously Ghost Story Games because they're Irrational now. Treyarch. I'm pretty sure I know people at a lot of other companies, but we all know each other. And this has a couple of things that kind of fall out from that. You need to be honest with yourself and those you meet. If you are known as a dishonest person, the people who have worked with you before, who are at those other companies, are going to say, oh, he's applying here? He's an okay person. And that alone is going to tell other people, oh, we need to look a little bit more, we need to scrutinize them a little bit more. When you There are going to be people who are going to ask for recommendations, and that's good. It's okay to ask for help, and asking for recommendations is not bad. But you need to recognize that your work and your reputation should be worth recommending. If you are the kind of person who sits at your desk all day and watches LOL videos and, I don't know, cat videos were big when I was on the internet. So that's what I go to when I think of time wasting. If you're Facebooking all the time, if you're on Twitter or Instagram all the time and you're not actually producing work, other people will notice that, and that will affect how you are viewed elsewhere in the industry. So again, focus on your strengths, focus on your passions, focus on why you want to be in the industry you're in. And this is going right into the next topic, work ethic. When you're at work, you're at work. I don't know, when I got out of college, this might not be a problem. For a lot of you, you might know, hey, I'm here to work. I'm here to put in the work and make sure that I'm getting my job done. But there are some people who, after years in the industry, they get down, they're like, oh, I'm here, I'm going to sit down. I'm expected to produce a crate today, so let me put 4 boxes in Mudbox and put a little bit there. And, oh, somebody pinged me on Facebook. I'm going to spend a little bit of time there. And, oh, what's going on in politics today? Oh, that's interesting. And, oh, look, there's something going on over here, and there's some interesting articles I want to read. And, oh, it's time for coffee now, so I'm going to go get my coffee. And I'm going to come back 20 minutes later, and then, oh, look, it's 12 o'clock. It's time for lunch. I'm going to spend 3 hours on lunch. And then they get back, and they're like, oh, it's 4 o'clock. Well, the rest of the day is shot. I may as well just pack it in. You know, the best way to make sure your work is worth recommending is to actually work. You're being paid to do something. Presumably, everybody who wants to get into, I'm in the game industry, I love playing video games. Presumably, if you want to go into video games, you love video games and you want to enjoy playing video games. But you're also there to work. You're not there to just play video games or just talk and socialize. You're there to produce something. Like every other industry, your company expects you to produce for them. Gearbox is a privately owned company. We want to entertain the world, but we also want to make sure that we are happy and creative, and we also make a profit. So we need to produce work. So if you're not working, you're not going to have a job. And then lastly, this is the like, if anything else, this is the one thing I want you guys to take away. There are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts. I can't tell you any secrets about getting into the industry. I can't tell you any secrets about how to be the most successful game artist or game creator or movie artist or animator. You know, the last minute is not the time to throw in work into the game. For years and years throughout middle school and high school, I was always under the impression that I worked better under pressure. And my teachers would say, hey, you've got a book report due on January 1st. And they would hand it to me November 1st. And they'd say, this book report is due January 1st when you get back from school. And I'd be like, I got that. That's great. I'm a fast reader. I would read the book in like a week and a half. Maybe, actually, I'd read the book in like 2 days. Because they were short books. They were always short books in high school. But I would look at a book and I'd be like, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Okay, well, I've got time to play games now. And for 1.5 months, 1 month and 3 weeks and 7 days, I would play games. And then December 31st, I would be like, oh, I've got a book report due tomorrow. Well, time to start working. I work well under pressure. And I'd type out, and I'd type out, and I'd type out, and I'd type out, and I'd spend 8 hours typing out this book report, and I'd get a B on it, or a B minus. And the teacher would say, this idea is rushed, and this idea clearly wasn't explored very much, and I don't understand why you're putting this in connection with this, and all of these things, and I'd look at that, and I'd say, well, I got a B plus or a B minus. That's not bad. If I had spent 2 months on it, I would have gotten an A, and I would have had far better scores, and I would have gotten more scholarship, far better grades, and I would have gotten more scholarships, and it would have been far better for me. instead of waiting to the very last minute. Because when you wait to the last minute, the quality and quantity of your work will be directly proportional to the amount of time that you spend on it. And I've messed up here. I'm sorry. Work will is directly proportional. That's horrible grammar. I want to fix that right now. So there is no secret path to success. The animators that were really good in my class, one of them is working at Disney now. He worked on Moana, and he worked on Ralph, Wreck-It Ralph, Joaquin Baldwin. Oh, you don't know him. You didn't go to school with me. Why am I talking to you? You're a friendly face. He animated for years before he showed up at work, or at Columbus College of Art and Design. All of the animators who were really good, they worked, and they worked consistently, and they worked repetitively, and they improved consistently and repetitively. There wasn't a secret to success, and this is something that I really just didn't understand, and I don't understand. Like, it's a mental block to me. I'm frustrated that it took me this long to understand it. The people who are successful are not special. They're good people, and they work hard, and that's what made them successful. They worked hard, they worked consistently, and they made sure that they put in the time, personally and professionally, to get where they wanted to be. And they kept their eye on that goal constantly. And one of the things that has prevented me from being as successful as I should be is that I have not kept my eye on that goal to work consistently and confidently and repetitively, to make sure I'm putting in the time and the work to be where I want to be. I keep getting distracted by games, which is fantastic. I love playing games, but it's not going to progress my career. So that's that. My name's Ian Davis. There's my email. I have a Twitter account. I don't use it. But, tweet me occasionally, and I'll probably tweet you back.